Hello, this is Whitney Utley, and this is my keynote for Sexism and Poverty as Obstacles in Education. This first part is a summary of pages 186 to 202 of Diversity and Equity in the Classroom. An example of an obstacle in education for women was the view towards their place and lack of rights in society. Some of these views included the idea that women were not capable of obtaining an education at first. Then, a slight shift in views was how education could help women become better caretakers in the home. And even after schools were created for girls, they were still not provided the same level of education that was provided to men. The fight for equality and women's rights and people of color has been ongoing for many generations and can even be, some people view it as original sin is where it started in many countries, and it is still a struggle today. Candace Sumner's TED Talks, she talked about at-risk communities, and she felt like she did not belong in her neighborhood because she was practicing violin while her neighbors did not have music class at all in school. She also felt like she did not belong because her neighbors were studying curriculum that she had studied 2 years ago. Unequal resources in education. Her term, education debt, Candace Sumner would like to use that term instead of the achievement gap because it refers to funding not being provided equally by the government to all communities, including communities of color. She posits that unequal funding is the reason why she cannot provide the education she had as a child to her own students. Sumner explains how brown and black students are eager to read, but the resources are not given to them in order for them to be successful because they are neglected by the government. This is my summary of Sumner's TED Talk. It is unfortunate that brown and black students must rely on the philanthropy of others instead of the government in order to be provided with the necessary resources for a quality education. Sumner uses the Donors Choose website where philanthropists donate money to projects and resources created by teachers in need. She posits that more needs to be done by the government to provide equal access to education for brown and black children, or else poverty, segregation between low socioeconomic schools and affluent schools will continue to be reinforced. This is from Jonathan Kozol's Savage Inequalities video. Kozol explained archaic funding in our government. The unequal funding and resources is an obstacle for the equal education for students of color. There's no level playing field in the United States. The game is rigged before it even starts, I quote by Kozol. In this above quote, Kozol argues that affluent schools receive much more funding than inner city and urban schools. He says, until equal funding for every student is met, the United States will continue to have an incomplete democracy. In summary, Kozol and Sumner both posit that segregation in schools is much more today than in the 1950s and 60s because the government has not provided adequate funding for urban inner-city schools, which reinforces the status quo of black children becoming victims of unequal education. Kozol has been fighting for equal rights of black children in education and provides a powerful message to young people and new teachers that we may see this victory in our lifetime, but that in order to do so, we need to fight for it. I would argue that unequal educational funding by the government is not an obstacle for students, but a wall. Obstacles imply that there is some way around them. However, children in urban inner-city schools do not have a choice and are not provided with means necessary to succeed, which is the fault of the government. Thank you. Goodbye.